Hi guys.
What up?
What are your names?
Danger. My name is Archer.
Danger and Archer. Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you too.
How old are you?
I am 8.
8.
I'm 10.
10. All right. What do you guys like to do?
I like to draw.
And
I like to play with my brother.
So, what about you?
I like to watch shark documentaries.
All right. Can you guys draw me a picture of someone doing something manly?
Okay. Is there a black in here?
Yeah. Use as many colors as you want. I'm gonna have you guys hold up your drawings, and then I want you guys to tell me about each of them. Let's start with you. Can you tell me about your picture? Hold it up for the camera to see. Lifting an elephant boy.
Boy!
Boy!
This is just a baseball player holding its bat.
I think that to be a man doesn't necessarily have a set definition. I don't think it's as stable as we've been taught.
I think the biggest expectation for me as a man that I have to kind of, or try to live up to, is just, you know, having everything figured out.
I don't think like men showing their emotions was modeled that well to me growing up. I can only remember like once or twice when my dad ever cried.
I think what I saw in pop culture and in movies wasn't necessarily reflected in what I saw in real life practice with like my family or with my friends and relationships that they were having.
It really came from a lot of different places, and there were a lot of mixed things going on, but the broad dominant theme was, I mean, very much what we hear every day is strong, always confident, takes charge in every situation, knows what he's doing, doesn't break a sweat.
Society says all the time, we all kind of know, we see it because it's thrown at us. It's thrown at us in advertisement. Like, you want a shredded body like me, like you know, like it's like that's like what they do, like to bring you in, like they want you to like to want to be that, like maybe not be so happy with yourself, which is how a lot of advertisements work.
Growing up in a Latino household, there's all these expectations that like the women have to do the housekeeping, they have to do a lot better in school and like with academics because like they're gonna be the ones to carry the family, while like the males kind of get away with like not performing as well. The expectations aren't the same.
I think like a lie that I did believe for a long time before I came out was like that, you know, I couldn't be openly gay and like still be a man. I think that's really like what the epitome of the closet is, and like what it means to be like a queer person and like not out, is like trying to like reconcile like the lie that society tells us that we're like lesser than, or that we're like stripped of our manhood.
A lot of guys will treat each other different ways or acknowledge each other in different ways based on their size. And then if you talk to some of the guys that are physically smaller, their numbers are smaller, it's like, that guy's bigger than me, like he gets priority, like he's worth more than I am because of his size.
I think what society says to be a man is to be strong, to be tough, to not show emotion besides anger, to get the girls.
So I guess the lie that I continue to believe and still wrestling with is that as men we're not allowed to emote feelings that are considered inferior or weak.
Now, for as long as I can remember, I've been told the kind of man that I should grow up to be. As a boy, all I wanted was to be accepted and liked by the other boys. But that acceptance meant I had to acquire this almost disgusted view of the feminine.
Every man has his own action movie. And what happens is, as a boy, you're told, this is the story, this is how it is. And in that action movie, you're invincible. In that action movie, you get all the girls. In that action movie, you have to be tough and emotionless. And the problem is, none of that is real.
Okay.
None of it.
So when I talk about toxic masculinity, What I'm talking about is a series of narrow and unrealistic expectations that we hold men and people assigned male at birth in our culture to.
But the large majority of American boys evince a healthy masculinity. They build rather than destroy. Their instinct is not to exploit vulnerable people, but to protect and defend them.
Being a man is first and foremost being a good human.
Lives. You're right. The suicide rates are up 40% among white men. Also, they are #1 to die of alcohol or opiate abuse. Prescription drug use is through the roof.
I have to recognize my own ability to be toxic and my own relationships.
He says people often get hung up on the name toxic masculinity.
I've heard the backlash.
But says it's something that men need to talk about.
To be a boy is to be very strong.
It's to be very strong. Can you hold it up for me? And what's he doing there?
He's throwing a boulder.
I didn't used to go to the gym a lot, to lift weights, but now I actually go pretty much every day this semester. And I would say half of it was for me. I was like, I need to be doing something. I can't be sitting in my room on my phone all the time. So half of it was me, but half of it was the fact that I was being told that I'm not big enough and I'm not tall enough.
I don't find like when I'm with like a group of guys that like oftentimes that's just like not really an enriching experience for me. It's kind of just like a lot of like small talk and like a lot of like surface level interaction, but it's not like, I don't know, like there's some guys that I've known since I came to Gonzaga and I couldn't tell you like what their struggles are or like what they're struggling with or like what their past is. You know, I don't know any of like the stuff that hurts.
My dad and I had a pretty big breakthrough recently. My whole life growing up, he was always kind of the role model. He was very strong. He always had his composure together. He never broke a sweat. Never let us see if he was struggling. And one of the times I was back home in the past year, he opened up to me quite a bit. Said he was struggling. Said he was seeing a therapist. Said there were things in his life that he didn't know how to control. Said there were things in his life that he had been letting slip by, and that was the first time I really saw like true vulnerability in my dad. But what he was naming was what I was kind of feeling at the time and what I was starting to see myself develop into, and now he and I can talk about that.
I've seen some really, really strong men break down completely because they just have no one to be vulnerable with. You know, that's a huge issue, and something that I've learned, you know, kind of just very, very quickly, leaving home and coming here, is that you can't do everything on your own, even though you feel like you want to, and you want to, you know, carve out your own life and take life by the horns, and you know, get the best grades, and you know, talk to the prettiest girls, and you know, just and succeed in all facets of life by yourself if you want, and you want to do that by yourself and on your own. It's just impossible. It's impossible for you to really, you know, master your life by yourself, and that's something that I really have to learn.
And those are just some of the messages that I've seen of what it means to be a man. Just thinking like it sets these unreasonable expectations that if you don't meet, then really is detrimental to like your self-image, and just like, oh, if I'm not being man enough, then I feel like I need to overcompensate in all these other areas.
I think that a notion of what it really means to be a man, by defining it kind of that rigidly, tends to go on the negative side. If you're going to define what it means to be a man rather than what it means to be a person, it's going to almost necessarily bring in some type of gendered stereotype.
I think it's important to talk about toxic masculinity because a lot of men are becoming more susceptible to mental illness. There was a study from the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention that was talking about how in 2016 there were 3.5 something times more male suicides than I think everybody.
The expectation of my department is that I handle the traditionally feminine roles. So I do things like make coffee, get coffee, put on all of the parties, Christmas parties, cook, remember everybody's birthday, get treats for birthdays, anything that has to do with those sort of feminine roles. In addition to my job, and I mean, I have a master's in business and I'm 4 years into my doctorate. I've passed candidacy already. I'm gonna, you know, I have to write my dissertation still, but I'm gonna be a PhD in a couple years here. But that particular group really looks at me like low man on the totem pole as a function of my gender.
We, as men, have done a really terrible job of being allies to women, of even being open to the ideas of femininity and effeminacy with ourselves. And if we actually took the time to look into what feminism really was as men, then I think that we would have a huge culture shift that would fix so many of the issues that we face as a culture.
I was lucky enough to be on different retreats or different events that were put on that talked about masculinity, and that was a place where I first heard someone openly be like, "Hey, porn's something people struggle with," and I was like, "What? Like you can talk about porn in that way?" Like I've never heard someone other than being like, "Yeah, dude, porn," and you're like I've never heard someone talk about it as this is something we all go through, and I'm like, oh, I knew that people probably went through it, and I was at that point I was like, dang, this is for sure an addiction that I'm in, and I don't know how to deal with it by myself. And having even someone just being acknowledging it and being like, this is something that men are struggling with was huge.
Just pornography itself just puts women in a light of objectification, and that when some people may see it as art or as something that is can be respected, but a lot of the times what happens is women are being dominated by men in these sexual acts, and if that's the messages of what men are getting, of what it means to be in a relationship, of what it means to be with a girl, of what it means to be with another human, then those can often turn out negative.
I think the big one in general for most guys is porn. For me, that was something that really I struggled with for a long time. For pretty much darn near every guy you talk to, that's something they struggle with. This group of guys that we met up with, they changed that. And I was able to break out of that view, out of that mindset, when guys started really up front asking me in those moments, is that leading you to be the best that you can be? Is that leading you to be the man that you want to be? And I could never answer yes.
And I think that's what this conversation needs to be about, is not only is your masculinity, unhealthy masculinity hurting other people in your life, but it's hurting you, and it's not allowing you to be the best person you can be.
I was really, really close friends with this guy in middle school. We did all of the same activities, all the same sports. We were had totally similar senses of humor. We were definitely best friends, very, very close knit. And then when middle school came around, he was kind of struggling a bit, and I noticed, and he ended up telling me that he was gay. I pushed him away, and it really harmed him and our friendship at a time when we were really trying to figure out who we were, and that ended up harming our friendship for a long time, and it took a long time to heal. And luckily now I can call him my best friend for sure, but it took us a long time to get there, I think, and a lot of pain, and so I definitely regret that.
Traditionally in male culture, denying your vulnerability is seen as strength, when in fact it actually takes more strength to acknowledge your vulnerability. Because if you acknowledge that you're not always in control, that you have weaknesses or sadnesses or vulnerabilities, you have to be confident enough in saying that, knowing that some people are going to think you're less than a real man, you know what I mean? And some of this ideology about what does it mean to be a real man is so damaging.
The world is changing, and that's one of the hardest things for people who are masculine, hyper-masculine, is change. And the sense I get from people who are hyper-masculine is they would really like to stay in that sort of 1950s June Cleaver sort of world where women had certain roles and men had certain roles, and that's changing so radically. And it's not going to go back to the way it was ever. It is time to get on the bandwagon here.
I hope nobody walks away thinking like, oh gosh, I went to this documentary, I got it figured out now, because it's a total journey that even guys in their 40s and 50s are trying to like sort out on morning runs and really grapple with the complexity of it.
I want to see the passiveness on this issue change. Like, I want people to have these conversations. I want them to be in the classrooms and acknowledge that this isn't just an issue that is faced by certain identity communities, or that it's just an issue in these communities. It's something that we all see and that we let go, we let happen because we're afraid to speak out.
There's all kinds of research that shows the relationship between ideologies and beliefs about manhood and then all kinds of problems in men's lives, in men's relationships, in men's violence. There's all kinds of research, 30 or 40 years of it.
For my son, future son, when and if he's born, I wouldn't want him to grow up in this environment of like having to feel insecure, to feel afraid, to feel fear. Because at the end of the day, I think this movement just kind of goes more fundamental, or boils down to how do we just become better people. I commit to holding myself and my emotions, even the ones that make me feel inferior or considered soft.
I commit to healthy vulnerability.
I commit to calling out other men when I see them engaging or embracing toxic masculinity in their everyday lives.
I commit to letting go of control of every part of my life.
I commit to leveraging my privilege as a man to call other men into conversations about toxic masculinity and centering the narratives of marginalized people.
I commit to teaching my own sons to avoid toxic masculinity by enjoying rich relationships with women that are not necessarily romantic.
I commit to be an example of masculinity that is empathetic, inclusive, and warm for all of my friends, family, and peers.
I commit to telling my brothers that I love them and listening to what they have to say.
I commit to continuing to do my work for the rest of my life.
I commit to loving and respecting all men regardless of their outward appearance.
I commit to fighting the culture of pervasive hypermasculinity by questioning myself, maybe taking responsibility, questioning others, questioning the power, and questioning just who I am and what I was raised to be.